Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us virtually, folks. And Kelly, thank you again for joining us in person. Thank you all for sticking around for a little chat. First, maybe let's just have everyone introduce themselves and their projects, if that's okay. We can maybe start with folks from afar. Gloria, do you mind kicking us off?
Sure, I'm Gloria Chung, and my project was Krakatau.
Thank you. Max, maybe?
Hello, everyone. My name is Max Bloching, and the project is called Tomorrow the Burning Heavens, or Himmelsfeuer is the German title.
Hi, I'm Julián Galay, and my project is Seismic Silence, or Un Silencio Sísmico in Spanish.
Thank you. And
hello, I'm Kelly Sears, and I did the Lost Season about Earth's final winter.
So maybe just one question for everyone before we turn it over to folks in the audience. I guess in looking at all these projects and putting them together in this program, we were thinking about how our experiences of kind of our bodies in the world, our sensory experiences, give us a way to relate to each other in both the present as like a, I think maybe in Gloria's project, right? Like a global event that we can all connect to each other through an experience of that. But then also across time, like this ability to collapse time in a way. So I'm just wondering if you could each maybe respond to that idea of collapsing time and how maybe you possibly thought about that in the making of your project, or maybe if you see that happening in different ways. We can start with Kelly.
I shot the Lost Season when I was at this art residency called MacDowell. And it's the first time I ever went to a residency where I didn't have a project in progress. And I was just wanted to see what would happen if I went there with a camera. And so I just was very interested in either filming time lapses or taking sequential photographs there. And as I was putting them together, I was showing a woman who had a studio down the street from me. And she says, time lapses don't normally look like that. Yours feel very anxious. And so there was something about in that compression of the time, you know, and it's whether my anxiety seeped through me into the camera, into the time lapse, or if there is this kind of embedded in the landscape, this anxiety. But I did feel like that there was a shakiness in them. And I had an ancient DSLR with me, and it's something that I'm not precious with. And that's why it's the best camera to use, because I'm not precious with it. And, you know, you think about time lapses, you see these beautiful 20K images on a drone with time lapses. And I think for me is the exact opposite, is where can I put myself with the camera? And after about a month of collecting time lapses there and then visiting my dad in Florida, and I thought we have to go somewhere from the woods. And so it became when I was visiting my dad. I've been filming a lot where I'm at, and it's about me moving through a space and collecting images to build an archive, then to graft a kind of speculative fiction or science fiction narrative onto those very daily, almost banal images. I even had to deal with that in the narration, which was like, these are just kind of really unimpressive, bleak images that I shot.
1 star
images. And so, but I did think about, you know, in this collapse of time, there is, you know, it wasn't smooth. It was shaky, it was jittery, and then for me there became an urgency in there, right? Like it's not something that's just like very seductive image. I think that there is a kind of a cry in there, and I was trying to have this very kind of frenetic energy to this piece about, you know, as fantastic as it seems, is it that fantastic about Earth's final winter?
Thank you. We'll throw it to Gloria.
I was thinking about the idea of collapsing time, literally, I guess, looking at these webcams, the volcano webcams, and just remembering this book that I had read about Krakatoa and thinking, wow, this is probably kind of similar to what might have been seen if there were such webcams back there. So it's, you know, no people, no cars, no houses. It's kind of just literally nature. Although on Krakatoa, obviously, if there were webcams, they would have been obliterated. But, you know, just looking at nature and thinking about a volcano 150 years ago, and then seeing these same processes, natural processes now through a webcam, it just seemed like basically the same time. What is the difference? There were no reference points in these webcams for us to know what time it was. And then trying to go through and find all these things that I had shot at sunsets or different lights, and then thinking how similar they were to some of the paintings and the artwork that had been done 150 years ago when this happened, and where it was just kind of, there's no difference. Or for me, I was trying to edit this together kind of seamlessly, where what you saw through these webcams, similar to a volcanic explosion 150 years ago, and the light effects now is probably because of pollution and all the ways that we're kind of harming the world, the way that we see these lights, and the way that the lights were back then with all the particles in the air. And so kind of literal collapsing of time in my mind as I was editing this.
Thank you. Julian?
Yes, in my case, time, I think from one hand, I was working with different media, this photograph of the tomb of my grandfather, some pictures from the 50s, a book from beginning of 20th century, the footage in Super 8, and also the videos with the Handycam are my video diaries. It's like a kind of ritual I have of walking and taking videos. Usually when I work, I made like a specific research and I work a lot in a subject and maybe takes a lot of years. But in the case of this short film, was like a experiment. I was playing with two very good friends, the two editors, Tatiana Masu Gonzalez and Manuel Embalse. And we were working in other films, more, I don't know, more serious or more big or whatever. And I came here, I'm in Berlin, and all the COVID happened, and I had some footage. So also was like playing with some material for 3 or 4 years. I think it's like these kind of different layers of time and in text, image, and footage. And I don't know, maybe also this idea of the seismic silence is a term from geology. You know, this idea of the silence in between two earthquakes. And I felt also in there this maybe this idea of time collapsing, you know, in a lot of meanings.
Thanks. Max?
Yeah, for me, it's also in a way that I started this film. I was hiking in the Alps. I was on a hike from the north to the south, and I was at the same time researching the Little Ice Age. So I had, you know, in my mind, but also in my audiobook that I was listening to when I was walking, the story of the Little Ice Age and the very present experience of the 1560s in the Alps when there was a negative climate change and it was getting very cold. And at the same time, I was seeing the effects of climate change in the Alps and the disappearance of glaciers. And it was a very odd juxtaposition. I just felt that as I was walking, the images that I saw in the Alps were strangely carrying like the meaning from the 1560s. And then I was looking again and the valley suddenly was contemporary. And so I was shifting, my eyes were shifting between these different times. And yeah, I was very conscious of this trajectory, let's say. So yeah, in the film, yeah, I enjoyed also playing with this feeling of it's slippery. We are sliding between two different time zones.
Thank you so much. We are already running low on time, so I'm just gonna see what questions there are out there for any of these folks. Two.
Julian, did you have any literary sort of influence on the structure of your piece, or did it come about organically?
It's a good question. Actually, I came from the sound perspective. I study composition, but I define myself as an undisciplinary composer because I work a lot with installations and films and concerts, but also with books. I write a lot. I think my main activity is writing every day. So in a way, yes, I think first I had the documents, the image, the sounds, and the text was at the end. And I try using some real diaries, some real things and documentations, things that I found in a cemetery in the street, in like trash. But also there is a little bit of fiction in that, like trying to take these materials and expand and radicalize the possibilities of fiction. So yeah, the structure, yes, the text was important in a way.
Thanks. There's, I think, here.
I noticed a lot of the shorts today were like heavily focused on the narrative. So my question is, what about your ideas first captivated you into making the short?
Is that for anyone in particular or just throwing it out? Anyone want to answer?
So mine comes from a walking practice. And actually, as the question about collapsing time was unfolding in time, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. And we touched upon this a little bit in the morning panel, was just thinking about this collapse between the present and the future, and that the story like exists in the near future. But this is like these are images from the present. And even if it is a story that's set in the near future, it really is about us in the present receiving that story. Your questions, these films were story-based, I guess, narrative-based. I'm not, those terms are also kind of fuzzy for me. But when I was shooting this in the woods, it's came from a walking practice. And then there's a lot of time for your head to kind of start telling stories to itself. And at one point it was, what if this was the last winter? And the story kind of came from there. But I also hope that it's a visual story as well. And so much like having the anxiety captured in the time lapses, I wanted this idea of this kind of like self-implosion of this gesture of capturing the final winter on some form of like video media, and having this kind of disruption, corruption of that idea manifest in how the image presented itself.
Alex? Yeah.
Okay, so I may be in a fugue state because I've been here since 10, but I'm going to make a connection across the three, for those of you who've been to all of them. And forgive me if I'm forgetting something, but in the morning, Eric talked a lot about landscape conceptually as a way to think about documentary. In the last previous set of shorts, they were populated with people and characters, and they were very character driven. I think they all were. In this case, I'm forgetting, but they were populated by landscapes with no characters visible in space. There were many characters produced through narration. And I'm wondering, again, I might have misremembered something from either of the two programs, but I'm wondering about that there are no human subjects in the documentary screen, and how you all came to not having people there and lots of landscape.
Thanks. Does anyone want to answer?
In my case, it was that I was really interested in this, exploring this interiority of the people in the 1560s. Have to have these like letters and diary entries of people in the 1560s, just narrated, not contextualized primarily as this is from the past or the present, so we can feel them. And then this, I guess, allows to look at landscape and again have this slippery feeling. Is it the past? Is it the present? What's the relation between the past and the present? Yeah, and I like that it's open, and I guess that's explains maybe the absence of having characters appear.
In my case, maybe I have been working a lot around the relationship between architecture and animals, and maybe this film is not about that, but I think my perception is completely, I don't know, is the way I see and I hear. I think in my diaries is also coming from a walking practice, so it's something very physical, and I think I'm just filming the things that, I don't know, make my curiosity being alive. And in the case of the Super 8, you have this beautiful and weird landscape, also with volcanoes and the animals, but also these scientific dispositives. And I really love that. And also in the material, there were no humans. So I think that is my main reason.
For me, it's very simple. I usually almost never shoot people. In fact, I never do. So everything that I do is just through almost exclusively landscapes. So this was kind of an easy way to translate this story for me, just with landscapes and no actual people.
This has been a really fun question to think about, because I think a lot of the earlier work I had, I would take bodies and recast them into stories using astronauts, telephone operators. But with this more recent body of work, I've been thinking about recasting landscape to perform in a different way. And so there are little human traces in there. There's our footprints, or my footprints, that distort away. And when I was in Florida, people who are the last beachgoers glitching out and disappearing. But I think I want to use the landscape to evoke a place where we might picture our bodies moving through. Like, would it be like if our body was moving through the last winter, if our body was at like the last time we could go to the beach? And then very much the character is evoked by the narration. And at first it seems like a voice maybe outside of there, but then you realize it's actually one of the camera operators who was initially hired, who resists this climate tipping point commodification at the end. But it's for us to project the human trace, or maybe the human erasure, into that landscape.
Thanks. Maybe we should call it because it's after 6. So we're running late, but thank you all for staying. Thank you all for joining us. Gloria, Julian, and Max, and Kelly. Thank you so much. We have one more program tonight at 8. The film Intercepted. Hope to see you all.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.